evening when the weather is far from pleasant. My name's Duncan Wood. I'm the media manager here at Gloucester Rugby, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening. However, you won't be hearing too much from me, you'll probably be pleased to hear, because the main attractions of the evening are the gentlemen here on the top table to my right, familiar faces to all of you. On the far end, we have Paddy Anson, who is our Head of Strength and Conditioning. Next to Paddy, Nigel Davies, who's our Director of Rugby. Then we have Ryan Walkinshaw, who's the Chairman of Gloucester Rugby. And then just next to me, we have Vaughan, who's our Chief Executive Officer here at Gloucester Rugby. The format of the evening, for those of you who've been here before, is going to be very much the same as in years gone by. We'll primarily be taking questions from the floor, from those of you here gathered today. We've got Tom Hartley, gentleman over there with a microphone. He'll be roaming the floor. So when we look for a question, please raise your hand. I'll direct Tom to the first person I see, or the closest person to Tom, just to keep the evening flowing, and he will pass you the microphone and feel free to put your question to the panel. The evening's also being broadcast live online, so say hello to our online audience. We're also providing updates to people who are following events via our Twitter feed, and that's been done courtesy of Tom down here at the front, and he'll also be feeding me some questions that are being submitted on Twitter using the hashtag, which is Gloucester Fans Forum. We're going to try and get through as many questions as we can. We aim to finish approximately 8:30 tonight, so we've got about 90 minutes to put questions to our panel. And of course, all of us will be answering questions as openly and honestly as we possibly can. We're not going to have an interval. We thought we'd just crack on, get through as many questions as we possibly can. However, Nick and his bar staff are open, so don't feel shy. If you need to get a refill, just wander over there and they'll be happy to sort you out. So basically, to kick things off, we have a question that came in online. It's a fairly open general question. It's one from Nigel, but I'm sure it's one that all of you are fairly keen to know the answer to anyway. Nigel, it's been a difficult season so far for a variety of reasons. What's your assessment of things so far this season?
Thanks for that one. I think I have to go back really to when I came in last season, and there was a new group of coaches working with a new group of people, and we would expect a positive outcome from that, and I think we certainly moved things forward from where we were the year before, and showed decent improvement. Off the back of that, as part of the coaching process, we plan to move things on. We plan to deliver different areas and push the boundaries in different areas. The fact is, we haven't been able to do that, and there are a number of reasons for that, a number of frustrations that I'm sure you share. But I can assure you, from a coaching point of view, we are hugely frustrated with where we are right now. I mean, there's some very straightforward and simple reasons for where we are. I think, and some of it is historical as well. If you look at the last 6 years, goal kicking percentages have been around the mid-60s. Last season, we pushed that up to 75, which is a reasonable rate, but is still not at the level that teams who finish top 4 get to. And this year, it's even lower than that. And I think, that is a huge factor in a game. And having reflected on the season so far, if we'd have been even in the 75% area, we'd have probably won 3 or 4 more games than we've already won. Added to that, I think momentum is huge in rugby football, and when you get a chance to take points, you've got to take them, because the effect it has both positively on your team and negatively on the opposition, and it can put you in a completely different mindset. So that has been a factor. The other thing is defensively, where we've got we're almost the worst defensive team in the league. But believe it or not, last year we were the most improved in 5 seasons in terms of the defensive record of Gloucester. So there's been a sort of historical, cultural view over the last 6 years that it's okay to concede tries as long as we can score tries. And I think it's the same probably with some of the goal kicking stuff, whereas we'd accept players who were naturally talented and had flair, but goal kicking wasn't necessarily a priority. And I think those 2 things alone have a significant impact. And again, if you look historically at teams that finish in the top 4, consistently in the league. Their defensive records are in the top 4 in the league. So culturally, we have quite a few things that we need to address, which probably weren't evident to me last season, and it is a big factor. We have to make defence a priority moving forward. It has to be a priority that I engage with and drive the team forward with. And the realism of it is we have to ensure that we're goal kicking consistently high 70s, 80s for us to be successful. So there's lots of other issues as well, Duncan, and which because of the situation that we're in, we've looked long and hard at absolutely everything, and as a result of that, we're in the process of producing a strategic plan on the way forward for Gloucester Rugby, which is quite substantial in terms of moving away from maybe where the club has been over the last 6 years, to ensure that we get success. I think, again, coming back to the coaching process, as I said, we looked to build on last year. That didn't happen. As a result of that, we've had to look deeper at some of the issues that we face. And now we have a clear plan on how we move forward, and I'm absolutely certain that we can do that. I think the other thing as well is the squad profile. And again, these things become more and more evident as the season progressed. In terms of, we got a very young group of forwards, and the two European fixtures we played recently, both Munster and Perpignan, in which the pack of forwards played very well. The average age of that pack of forwards was 24, which is exceptionally young, particularly in European terms. And also, this year, we've got the lowest number of internationals in the squad than we've had for 7 years. So the profile in terms of the experience is quite significant. The other thing is that when you look at the cost balance of the squad, it's been skewed heavily towards sort of the back line and the back row. And we need to be a top 4 forward-orientated team. We need to have that in the front 5, and we've certainly looked to do that in terms of our recruitment, in terms of putting the resources into the areas that they need to go to. So that's been quite significant. But there are certainly short-term measures which we are looking at and addressing, but there are slightly longer-term measures, and long-term in rugby, I'm talking months, not years. There are quite a few reasons, but there are some fundamental issues that we have to address, and I think there are some cultural issues that we need to address as well.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Do we have any questions from the floor? Would somebody like to? Tom, there's a gentleman over here. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Nigel, the first point you made there about goal kicking, so sat in this very seat, I think, a year ago, I asked you the specific question about a kicking coach. And I think you said at the time you knew a ginger-headed gentleman from Wales. Mr. Jenkins might come up and help you if that was needed. Have you thought of calling on his services this year?
No, I haven't. I mean, we've obviously used Jonathan Carled again. I think there's definitely a need for kicking expertise, and as I say, Jonathan Carled helps us, and the boys tend to respond quite well to him. I think as much as anything else, it's psychological with these kickers, and the next natural question on from that is, do we use a psychologist? Well, we've looked to use an individual, and the players have access to that individual, and they're starting to use him now. So we do support them with everything that they need, but it does become very individual. I can't force a player to see a psychologist, like I can't force anybody in this room to go and see a psychologist. It's a very personal thing. But with the players that we've got, they are very professional. They want to make sure that they're supported and they get the very best support. We do that. But ultimately it comes down to individuals. Top goal kickers are quite scarce. They're paid a lot of money. It's a high pressurized job, and that's the nature of the position. But it's something we have to address.
Okay, who would like to ask a question now? At the front, Tom? Okay.
You identified earlier 2 areas of weakness, which has been the goal kicking and the defence. But for me, there's also a third one, namely, we've given away far more than our fair share of penalties and yellow cards this season. What are we doing in terms of trying to redress that problem? Do players get fined? Are there any sanctions? How are we actually going to reduce this problem? Because it's definitely cost us a few games this season.
Yeah, I think first of all you have to break down where those yellow cards are coming from. You know, some of them have been at set piece because we're under pressure, and that's a technical issue as much as anything else. Some of them, you know, if they're 50-50 calls, it's very difficult, and you can allow that. But the ones that are blatantly, you know, unacceptable and stupid, and we actually had 2 on Friday night, you know, are just not acceptable to us. Players are made completely aware of that. You know, it comes into selection when we have the opportunity to do that. But you know, we have to look at it holistically as well, and from a coaching perspective, we have to look at ourselves first and make sure technically they understand what they're doing. They understand the laws, because you know that's a factor sometimes, believe it or not. You know, it really is. And you know, that's a coaching responsibility as much as anything else. So it's not as straightforward sometimes as you know, just pointing the finger at an individual. It's a collective response, and ultimately I'm responsible for it, and I take responsibility for it. And you know, it hurts because God knows I certainly wasn't a dirty player in my time, and I'd like to think, you know, I played quite smart, and I want my team to be smart as well. So it's an education process. It might come down to, you know, some of the things I mentioned before in terms of the profile and the experience within the squad. And we need to build on that, and we need to build on the character within the squad as well, through what we've currently got, but also through our recruitment process.
Okay, we've had a question coming on Twitter. It's actually a question for Paddy. And it's from one of our more regular tweeters, a young lady called Beth Weller. She says, Paddy, with the changes in laws in the summer and their subsequent implication on strength and conditioning, what changes did you have to make to the pre-season campaign, and what have you had to do throughout the season as well to take that into account?
Well, the biggest change was obviously in the front row. We knew that the scrum laws were changing, and to that end we looked to make sure that the props were used to high lactate tolerance loads. So we bought in 4 watt bikes which the players were tested on. So all the front row were tested on watt bikes, and these machines test the players heavily. They load the legs heavily, and we also invest in the Myo truck. The Myo truck makes sure the players' profiles, their body posture and profile in that contact situation is held. So the scrums have changed hugely, and because of that, the players are in a completely different mindset in their training regimen to what they were last year. The front row have got a new testing battery which is developed on the watt bike. They are under a completely different strength program, which is based around grappling skills, based around upper body strength and very heavy loading in the legs. And then their testing protocol is very much about unloading from the rugby, not the rugby, but the running side of things, and more loading on the legs in the gym, on the squats, the Myo truck, and the watt bike.
Okay, do we have a question from the floor? Tom, gentleman, right next to you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Is that working?
Can hear you.
It's very interesting about the forwards and what you say about the need to have a very strong pack, a winning pack. At the beginning of the season, I was under the impression that we had the personnel. In fact, things that you said, Nigel, actually gave me that impression. But it's all changed. We're now buying a complete front row. We're buying a lot of players in, and I just wondered, when did it all change? When didn't we have the personnel? Or when did you decide we didn't have the personnel? And was that a subject of the review, or what?
I mean, first and foremost, is this year is a big opportunity for us to recruit considerably. In terms of 24 players out of contract, there's an increase in the cap that we work into, which is going to be fully funded by the club. So because of those factors, there's a big opportunity. Last year, there wasn't so much of an opportunity to make significant changes. Also, we were anticipating certain things around the scrum in particular. And if you still look at the laws and how it is supposed to be refereed, very different actually to how it is being refereed right now and the new law interpretations. So,
can you be a bit more precise then?
Yes, of course. First of all, there's not supposed to be a hit on engagement, and there very clearly and obviously is a significant hit, and there's not supposed to be any pressure exerted at the scrum until the ball is placed in. And we were almost too naive, really, in the early period of our season, particularly around scrum in that area, and not streetwise enough. We've said that, we know that. There were other reasons as well. The fact that we lost Nick Wood, who's probably one of the most experienced loose heads, for 9 weeks early in the early part of the season didn't help, and the fact that Sean Knight has not really been fit all season with one injury or another. He's had a little bit of a run of games, but he's got injured again, so he hasn't been able to train and condition as we would have wanted him to. So really taking away 2 of our frontline options in the front row hasn't helped either. The good thing about having Nick Wood back as well is the feedback that he's been able to give through his experience to the coaches about what's actually happening, because he understands very well, and he's a smart operator, shrewd operator, has helped to take our scrum forward a little bit. And also, mid-season, we felt that we really needed to shore up the scrum a little bit, and obviously brought Sealer in. I think it's been an excellent signing, and it certainly helped things there. So our scrum was under a lot of pressure at the start of the year. It's still nowhere near where it needs to be, but there's a significant improvement, and we've looked at our scrum success from the first 6 games, which was very poor, and the improvement that we've had from then till now, and it's been quite significant. In fact, we're the most improved scrum in the last 6 games. Now, that's not saying much, because we're still down the bottom end of the league, but there has been a significant improvement in that area. And as I say, I think on reflection, there was a clear plan, and there was a belief in that plan, and we've had to sort of realise that we didn't get to where we wanted to, and we need to change things up.
Okay, next question. Anyone from the floor? There's a young man down here. Thanks, Tom.
This is for Nigel. What do you think Hibbard will bring to the pack when he comes next season? And also, have you decided who's going to tell him he has to do the milk challenge?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to tell him he's going to do the milk challenge. Maybe that should come from you. And I think he's already told the boys via Twitter and a few other things that he won't be cutting his hair. He reckons that's where his strength is. So I think it's fine by us. I really think it's quite a significant sign, and I think he'll become a bit of a cult hero in Kingsholm. I think with the way he plays, just watching him on the weekend again, he throws himself 100% into everything. He's a real powerful pocket rocket. And I think he'll lead the group, because we need to bring more leaders into this group. But I think he'll lead the group not only through his actions on the field, but he's matured as well. I knew Richard Hibbard when I was coaching Wales, and he was a young lad coming through the system, and we actually wanted to give him an opportunity, and he got his opportunity with us in Argentina, and he was very immature at that stage, but he obviously had that physical presence. And now he's got to the stage in his career where I think he's very mature, or he's a lot more mature than he was. But he's a little bit of a crazy horse, but it's not a bad thing to have in the mix, I think, and that's one of the things we want to get out of him, really, on the basis that I've said quite clearly publicly, we want to get back to some core values of Gloucester Rugby, which is to have a forward pack that will dominate and people will fear coming to Kingsholm with. And he'll be a big part of that.
Okay, I'm going to take a question that came in on email during the week, and it's one for Ryan and I guess for Steve as well. And it's the situation with regard to European rugby. And the question is, there was another meeting took place in Paris today. Have the pair of you had any feedback at all from what was discussed today? And where do you think things stand with regard to Europe and next season at the moment?
Well, I'll start on that one. Obviously, Premiership Rugby meetings is prime focus at the moment, is trying to find some sort of resolution with Europe. It's been going on now for over 2 years, and to be honest, it's been going in every single direction that you could possibly expect it to have gone in. As has been made very public, we thought we were in a good position with an agreement with the French to start a new Rugby Champions Cup, and like all agreements with the French, they shouldn't be trusted. And they did what everyone expected, and they turned around, and it's a lot more complicated than that, but but most of that is out there in the public domain anyway. Where we are currently, I can't actually say. It's all very confidential. I've heard the same thing that most people have heard today, that it was a good meeting. It's one of 2 meetings in the last 7 days, and they've been moving positively, and fingers crossed we should have some form of European competition next year, and hopefully under the terms that we outlined that we would find acceptable with the Rugby Champions Cup. I don't actually think there's anything more we can say, is there?
No, I think that's about it. But the one important thing for Gloucester Rugby is that of the options that are there, again, we can't go into too much detail, but the financial security around the club next season and our funding is secure. So, kind of base camp has been reached with respect to making sure that we're okay. And now the very important part of who we're going to be playing against, what countries, and obviously from a supporter's perspective and a sponsor's perspective is to come out of the next few weeks of conversations and communications.
Okay, do we have anybody in the room who'd like to ask a question? Lady in the back in the white top.
Evening. It's a question for Ryan and Stephen, actually. With the momentum towards Rugby World Cup 2015 sort of gathering, and I think there was an announcement today about recruitment of 6,500 volunteers in the pack. I think that's what it's called. I just wondered what the plans were here at Gloucester in terms of improvements for the stadium, and anything general really, or specific to Rugby World Cup 2015.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I'll take that one. If the stadium's still standing this time tomorrow, I don't know if you're aware, but we've genuinely had a little incident over in the corner there where the flashing lights are this evening. But as long as Armageddon doesn't hit and the Severn doesn't overflow, we've got some great plans around Rugby World Cup. First and foremost, we want to ensure that our own supporters get to experience the Rugby World Cup at Kingsholm. We've got 4 fantastic games here, and are working hard with ER 2015 to ensure that supporters get a chance to see World Cup rugby at Kingsholm. That's a big key for us. Second piece is legacy. We're going to be opening up Kingsholm to the world really at the World Cup. Argentina and Tonga and Scotland, etc., are coming here, which will be fantastic, and obviously Japan again, who were here not long ago. So we want them to have a fantastic time. We're also going to be bringing people here from other parts of the country who would love to come back to Kingsholm. So we're going to be working very hard during and after the Rugby World Cup to ensure that they get a welcome back at Kingsholm, and we can try and bring them into the family here at Gloucester. With regards to Kingsholm development, there are 1 or 2 options that we potentially have with regards to the stadium. The agreement is actually what's called a venue hire agreement, and it is effectively a handing over of the stadium for the period of the World Cup. That's the genuine truth of it. The Rugby World Cup guys will hire a number of our staff, they'll hire a number of our offices, and they've been here twice in the last week, and probably 2 or 3 days a week now we're meeting with the Rugby World Cup committee, talking about media, about operations, about safety, security, hospitality, dignitaries and everything else in between, and also with the council. With regards to Kingsholm itself from a Gloucester Rugby perspective, there are no wide-scale, huge plans at the moment to develop Kingsholm. For the very, very simple reason is, you know, we sell out very, very rarely. We have a fantastic support here, in my opinion, the best in the Aviva Premiership. But we've only sold out once this season, once last season, and only twice the season before. There are many reasons for that, granted. But until we get to a point where, you know, we think that we're going to sell at the ground 7, 8, 9 times a season, it would be a bit of an ego trip to start looking at putting more attendance on just for the sake of it. However, that doesn't mean that we aren't looking at the stadium at the moment, and there are 1 or 2 areas where we may look at, if we can get some assistance, which would be a legacy piece from Rugby World Cup. But we're very much at the planning stages at the moment. So has that answered your question? Great.
Okay, who would like to ask a question next? Okay, Thomas, gentleman over here. About 6 rows back. Thank you.
Good evening, gents. From what you said about, or didn't say, about the European situation, will that affect us in terms of recruitment and the standard of player that we can recruit? Accepted that we have recruited some very good forwards, it's probably obvious that we need a 10, and I'm surprised that that question hasn't come up already. Will it affect the calibre of 10 that we can recruit, or are we in a safe position and we can expect somebody good?
Do you want me to go through the first bit and you can do about the recruitment bit? Just on the efforts on recruiting high calibre players because of the European situation. At first, it was potentially a bit of an issue which was discussed, and at the end of the day, all English clubs were in the same boat, as were all French clubs at the time as well. So there's not been a huge issue. After the first discussion, there wasn't really a huge issue, and it sort of disappeared quite quickly. I think most people have accepted that there was going to be some form of European competition, and obviously there was then discussions with the English and the Welsh joining together, which would have essentially actually put the Rabo under a lot more pressure than us, and actually would have potentially helped us try and acquire some of the players from Ireland and Scotland that we would have wanted to come to the club. I think we've made a pretty big statement already in bringing some people over. I know we do have a few more that we'll be announcing soon. Obviously, we can't say that tonight. But just rest assured, the recruitment's gone very well this season. There's been some big names and hopefully a couple more to come, which will put us in a good position next year.
Just to support that, really, in terms of recruitment, it's been a key priority of the club and of mine in terms of getting the right balance and rebalancing the squad in line with the core values that I've spoken about. But also, during the recruitment process, I've probably already met something about 50 players, because it's all very well knowing the players and seeing the players play, but the most important thing, I believe, is the character of the players, and we need character. We need character in our team to fight those tough moments that will come in any game, and we need to add character to this side right now. So it's a crucial process, and in virtually all my dealings with players, actually Gloucester is a very easy sell. It's a very easy sell in terms of the financial stability of the club, but most importantly, this stadium and its support. And everybody you speak to, no matter where they're from, they talk about that, they know about it. And that, just touching on the thing about the stadium and changing the stadium, I'd be very careful about that, because I think Kingsholm has a unique identity to it. And I've gone from playing in a stadium similar to this to going to a new stadium, which is a great facility, but we lost something in that transition, and I wouldn't want us to lose anything if we do look to modernise the stadium, because I think it's a great facility. So the point I'm coming back to is that Gloucester is actually, it's an easy sell to players. It's not a difficult sell. And as I've said all along, since I've been here, I think all the ingredients are here for us to be successful. We've just got to make sure we are successful now. Over the last 6 years, we haven't been. But I think there's some cultural issues, and having been in the job, 18 months now, I'm fully clear what we need to do to move that on.
Just to jump in on there as well, I mean, Nigel was exactly right in everything he said, but there's another point to make on how many players we've retained this year. There's been heavy touting of a lot of our players through a lot of the clubs, both in England and in France. And it's been a huge effort to keep those players here, but the players wanted to stay. That's the important thing. What we are building here, what Nigel's been building. It hasn't taken too much negotiation for these players to want to sign new contracts with us, and to ignore, in the case of a lot of players, some pretty significant offers from particularly in France. And you're also looking at people like Hibbard and Afoa. I mean, these guys are high value players, and they chose to come to us rather than going over across the channel, because they felt that there was something special about being at a club rather than going to France, where they would feel a bit like a mercenary or a pawn on a checkboard in a business, rather than feeling part of a family and a community, and with the sort of support that this place has. So Nigel's right, the sell of this club has never really been an issue, and we don't see it being an issue going forward, even with European discussions or not.
I didn't answer the question about the 10, did
I? That's what they've been waiting for.
We're... yeah, we tried, but we've already secured the services of one player in that area, and we're looking to continue that. There's a couple of options. It's been probably the biggest area in terms of research, and we really have scoured the world. I know that phrase is used quite a lot when it comes to recruitment and various other things, but we really have spent a lot of time looking at a lot of names. What I won't do is bring a player who's people think is a big name, but actually hasn't got the attributes that we want. That would be the worst thing we could do. But I'm really confident that we're going to have some quality in that position, and we're going to have a quality goal kicker. And things are quite delicate on that front right now. And I actually made a phone call before I came in here. And there's a lot of to and fro in around a few issues, but it's an area I'm working extremely hard on, and I'm confident that we'll get the right balance and the right type of player here.
We have a question that's come in online. It's a question for Paddy again, and it's whether you can offer us some insight with regard to the GPS units that the players have in the back of their shirts, what sort of information that sends back to the analysts, how you use that during the game. One question has said that there seem to be blocks of replacements on 55, 60 minutes, and is that as a result of the analysis that you're doing via the GPS?
Well, first and foremost, the analysis that's done with the GPS is aside from the analysis that's done within the coaching department with Nigel and Stan. The GPS analysis and the heart rate data is all monitored live by Eamon Hyland and Rob Suka. And Eamon Hyland is an expert at looking at data, looking at the fine-tuning of it, and making sure the players in the right position on the pitch. And what it is you've got the GPS, which is a measure of the distances they're covering, the speeds they're travelling at, and the intensity they're working at. The heart rate data is a measure of how that's affecting the body, how the body is dealing with that particular load. And I think a bit of a fallacy is that we make changes based on that heart rate data or that GPS data. What we will do is, if we're in a situation where, for instance, Will James and Elliot Stook are both playing the second row, and Nigel wants to know who, in Eamon's opinion, possibly needs to come off, then Eamon will give him that. But Eamon would never say to Nigel or to Stan, you need to take this player off, because ultimately that is science. You don't want to be led by science all the time. The coach's intuition, the coach's feeling on the pitch, the coach's feeling in the stand is more important than what the actual science is saying. So when we have changed at 55 and 60 minutes, that's not necessarily a point in the game where we say we're going to make changes. It's actually down to Nigel's intuition at the way the game is going and who needs changing.
I think we use it more, after the event when we're reviewing the game with players, because the process is every Monday we come in, we review the game generally, then we review the detail with the players, and if a player hasn't contributed much in the game, we look at his work rate, how many metres he's covered, and we can use that as a monitor and a method really of engaging with the player and saying, well, why aren't you working as hard as we expect second rows to work, for instance, because we know the average of our squad. We also know what other teams' players' work rate is, and we can actually compare players like for like. So we use that more so after the event. I've said before, I think that there is a lot of information, and I can hook into that during game time if I wish. But a lot of what I do is pretty instinctive, as most of you. You'd look, see what's going on the field. If you feel a player isn't actually performing or his performance has dropped off, you'll make a change. If you feel you need to make a change because you've got a player on the bench, which you normally like to carry players on the bench that can make an impact, and you need to make an impact, you'll make a change. And you'll want to do it around that mark, because if they're going to make an impact, they're going to need some time to get on there, get their second wind, and then actually make an impact. I've obviously got things wrong, but in terms of our substitutions, I think they've generally been okay. I've been quite pleased with what our subs have been able to do, and I think we've got good combinations of players that allow us to do that. And the other thing you've got to remember is, particularly front row forwards, the work rate that they get through is immense, both in in the set piece and what we're asking them to do around the park. And they're big, heavy men. They will tire. And we need to have energy coming onto the park. So, those are people that you particularly pay attention to. But interventions are key. They're very important. And as much as there's a lot of information around me, and I will go to it when I need to, it is mainly through what I'm seeing and my intuition. And as I say, a lot of what you guys will see as well.
And Paddy, I'm right in thinking that the analysis of the players goes on up at Hartbury during the week as well, and can help to shape the training week as well.
Yeah, there's daily analysis from everything we're doing first thing in the morning, getting the players' markers, their wellness, their heart rate variability, looking at how they're feeling, how well they've slept. You can then go from there, look at the physio data and the data they've come in from the groin squeeze, work out if the player is able to train or if there's fatigue coming. And then you can dictate and monitor how the rest of the week goes based on that Monday's assumptions that we can make. Then during training, we are heart rating the players and looking at their GPS scores and making sure that the week is very structured. What we don't want to do is overload the players. Equally, what we don't want to do is have a situation where the players aren't being loaded properly. So a lot of it's about fine-tuning, a lot of it is very, very scientific. But at the same time, we're not going to be a club that just uses science completely. Sometimes it's got to be my intuition or the rest of the coach's intuition to actually say we need to work harder here, regardless of what the data actually shows.
That's great, thank you. Do we have another question from the floor? Gentleman right at the back there, Tom.
Good evening. Nigel, you just said about the changes that you make and the coaching that you do, or the alterations you make to the team. I think you're unique in the Premiership in that you're standing at pitch level. I don't think any other coach does that. Can you tell me what your thoughts are on standing there?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I like to watch the game, right? And okay, we'll talk about the angle in a minute, but I think a lot of coaches that sit in an elevated position, they've got a laptop in front of them, and they end up watching a lot of replays of the game. And I think there's a merit in that, but they don't actually watch the game as it unfolds because they're watching a replay of something. So I just like to watch the game, process what's happened, and then continue to watch the game. Also, when I'm pitch side, I just get a feel for the physicality. I get a feel for how the players are operating, how they're working, and I just sense sometimes when they're tired and we need to make a change. I've watched the game a couple of times during the LV period in one of the boxes at the back here. Now, I haven't spoken to Steve about this, so he'll probably have a heart attack when I mention this. And I actually quite like that view, because it's close enough for me to get a feel for what's going on, but it also gives me a clear perspective of everything that's happening on the field, which is what I don't get when I'm pitch side. What I can get is feedback from the coaches above as to what they're seeing, and what I can get is clips sent down pitch side because we've got a laptop there, so I can get that information. Again, because of the season we've had so far, I'm reflecting on everything and looking at everything that I'm doing, and that is one of the things. But for me as well, if I do move away from there, it'll be for the right reasons, but I will miss being that close to the action and getting a real sense of what's going on. Plus, you know, I'd like to think I can influence the touch judge and the referee every now and again.
Okay, do we have another question from the floor? There's a gentleman over here, Tom, right at the front.
I think to start, I'd like to, as a man with two young boys who are absolutely Gloucester Rugby mad, and a wife who's mad about Gloucester Rugby players, I'd like to thank you for continually talking about culture, and I'd ask you to keep doing that, because I think that's really quite special here. We often come as a family, and we stand, you know, in the cheap seats because that's pretty affordable for a family. One of the things that we've noticed over the seasons, and that we've heard anecdotally as well, is that the standard of catering for people that are here on match day, and obviously this is for Ryan and Stephen, unless you guys want to get involved, isn't really perceived as being the best. And I wonder if you can tell us what your thoughts are in that area, if there is any discussion about that, or if, you know, it's not really on your radar at the moment, because for families it is.
Yeah. Well, when we made a change and Ken Noss's left and we brought Steve on board, from the board and from myself, one of the key things I wanted them to look at was the food, both for up here in the boxes and for down on pitch side as well. I know that Steve will go through this. I'll leave them to talk you through it, but there's been significant changes, and you know, we're certainly better than we were. Probably still got a bit more work to do, but I'll let Steve go through the details of that.
Yeah, cheers, Ryan. Firstly, I'm just looking forward to Nigel speaking to the box holder to explain that he wants to stand in there for the games, but there'll be a fantastic touchline view for the box holders anyway for the rest of the season, by the sound of it. Yeah, that's a good question on catering. My role's many levelled, from, you know, decisions and conversations around Europe to, you know, what does it cost £4 for a pizza slice and everything in between, and that's fine. Catering's a very important part, and customer experience is a really important part. Probably unbeknownst to yourselves, we actually have a few gentlemen every match now that come around the stadium, and they're actually checking out customer experience, supporter experience, in every level, whether you be a box holder standing in the shed, somebody who comes in at 10 to 3 for a quick pint in the Lion's Den and go and takes your seat, etc., etc. And we have made some changes. We've started off, if I just start off kind of because we're in this stand now, in this area we've done some fairly big renovations downstairs on what used to be called the Cathedral View, which we've now got as the Abbey Business Lounge, and done a lot of change in there, make that a more suitable place for people to talk about work and to converse. In terms of our restaurants up here, the Legends Lounge, we've changed completely from just being a kind of 3-course meal and watch the game. We now have former players, current players involved, 4-course meals. We've changed the catering in the 1873 restaurant too, and we've got a gentleman called Rob Rees, who some of you may be aware of, otherwise known as the Cotswold Chef. We haven't announced this. There's a lot of things that we're doing here at the moment which I haven't announced and we don't like to talk about, because if you do that before you deliver something and execute it well, it's what I call lipstick on the gorilla. You know, it's you're slapping a lovely name on it but not actually changing anything. But Rob's consulting with us at the moment on catering and food around the stadium, including concessions. So far, so good up in these areas. Our feedback's been fantastic. You're always going to get some people not enjoying change. That is life, unfortunately. I keep trying to tell my wife to shop at Lidl instead of Waitrose, but it will never happen, I'm afraid. So, not everybody will change. So this part is a tick in the box so far. We're now looking at concession catering. In terms of concessions, we've actually changed we've made it a much bigger variety than last year. We've been having noodle bars, we've had pizzas, even for the kids we've been having pick and mix behind the areas where we can have our concession changes. Some people love it, some people prefer to stay with what they've got. It's an ongoing piece. In terms of a general match day, just to give you an idea, we've invested £80,000 just in what we call EPOS tills, which are electronic point-of-sale tills, to make things transact quicker. We spent a further £20,000 in terms of our pouring systems on beer. We serve about 13,500 pints on any given match day. So we're taking this very, very seriously, being appreciated, etc. Do we believe that we've got there? No, not at all. Do we speak quarterly, monthly, fortnightly with SFC, our caterers? Absolutely. And our commercial manager and our new marketing manager are working with their new people and their new non-exec board to get it absolutely right. And it's important that we do get this feedback from you guys. And we have got another feedback mechanism which we're going to be bringing into play before the end of the season to get more views about not just the catering, but the general supporter experience at Kingsholm. So we can do a lot more work at the end of the season, because the end of the season is key for doing a lot, because once the season's up and running, it's quite difficult to make significant change. So totally get where you're coming from. We have been trying to do a lot more for kids and families this year in terms of ticket prices and ticket offers. And that's difficult as well, because we have such a fantastic group of season ticket holders. You've got to get this balance between trying to bring a new generation of supporters through at the same time as appreciating and not upsetting your core DNA of support. Albeit we've been a lot heavier on the marketing to new support and to try and, Exeter was a game for families, and we've had Leicester was a party night, and there's more to come. We haven't lost our marbles. The reason we're doing this is to try and get more people through the gates. But I can rest assured, I can show you on a spreadsheet if you want, being a season ticket holder is absolutely the best, most economical way to enjoy coming to Gloucester every season. And of course you get to keep the same seat if you're in the seats as well. So do appreciate it, but we have got a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try and make the supporter experience as good as it can be.
And Gloucester Rugby families is very, very good. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now halfway through the evening, and we'll kick off with an email question that's come in. It's quite a light-hearted one for Nigel. What the heck did you do to the squad in the week ahead of the Munster and Perpignan games, particularly bearing in mind their performance against Saracens the week before?
Well, I mean that was it really. I think the performance against Saracens was just unacceptable, and you normally, unfortunately, you do get a reaction when individuals and teams perform that way. It was a very tough week, and we just didn't do ourselves justice, and we wanted to come out against Munster and throw everything we had at them, which I think we did. I thought we played a great game of rugby. I spoke to Rob Penny after the match, and he said that's the most exposed they felt as a side, and they couldn't quite understand how they came away with a win at the end, because we put them under so much pressure, and we did. The fact was we weren't clinical enough, having created the chances, but in every other facet of the game I thought we were excellent. But that it was in stark contrast obviously to the week before, which is disappointing, and I think it's a reflection on our season where we lose two, win one, lose one, win one, and it's that consistency and that character that we need to show on a more regular basis. There was no one thing. I would say, I think obviously you get a reaction from a disappointing performance like that, but there was lots and lots and lots of things that we did which I think had an impact. Obviously we had Mike Teague in that week as well to present the jerseys, and that was great to get Mike there, a true legend if ever there was one. And he didn't say many words, but what he said were pretty significant, and it was appropriate that he came in at that time. And I've made a big thing because I'm from a traditional rugby club. I played all my career, and I understand what it means to do that, and I understand what it means for supporters to see their team play so poorly, particularly at home. And we just had to have a reaction, and we got that. And on reflection, I think we had two very important games before the Saracens game, in both Worcester and London Irish. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, we seem to, having got results in both those games, we seem to come off the gas a little bit mentally, and we can't afford to do that. And so there were lots of factors, lots and lots of factors, and we pushed lots of buttons that week in every single way that we knew as a coaching group to do. That's what we have to do with this group. We have to work very hard. I think when you get a team up and running and it's operating at a high level, it tends to generate a momentum of its own, and you're not actually doing that much from a coaching perspective. But when you are where you are, every week is a battle, and we're working extremely hard to make sure we bring some momentum. We're not quite there yet. We've almost got on a run, and then we've been knocked back again. But we're working very hard to bring some momentum into this group right now.
Okay, the gentleman in the blue jumper at the front there, Tom, had a question.
Nigel, we talked about defence just now. I think over the last, nearly 2 seasons now, I don't think we've got a winning bonus point in the Aviva Premiership. Is there a reason why we're not clinical enough, we're not turning pressure into points? Because most of the other teams get bonus points.
Yeah, I think it's a number of factors. I think we've got a game that is in attack where we've got a clear framework. We do certain things. For instance, from deep, because another comment I've heard is that we kick quite a lot. And when you look at us compared to other teams, we're in the high end of kicking, but not certainly in the top teams. And the team that kicks most of all is Saracens, believe it or not. And internationally, the team that kicks the most is New Zealand. Now you wouldn't think that, but they're able to put pressure on teams. And it's also the transition. If you're a very effective defensive team, most tries statistically are scored from turnovers. So if you're effective in that area, that's when the field and the opportunities are at their best. We will try and play from deep areas, and you'll see that. I'm sure you feel that. The reason we do that is because defensively sides are probably at their weakest at that point, because they're keeping a lot of players in the backfield, so they're covering that space. In the midfield areas, we want to play 2 or 3 phases to try and encourage their defenders in the backfield, because they're not as deeply placed as they would be from when we're playing deep, but they are still mindful of the space that they're covering. So we want to try and entice those players up, and if that is the case, we want to play. We want to play or to kick to the space. But when we get into that top third, very much about holding on to the ball, going through the phases, and we've got a framework that we use, which I think is a very good framework, and at times we've seen us attack very well. However, it's still a framework that the players are coming to terms with. It does rely a lot on decisions made on the field, and we work very hard on those decisions and those pictures that we put in front of them in training. It's like our defence. We're not where we want to be. We don't score enough tries from set piece. We do score a reasonable amount of tries, and the highest number of tries from kick returns, because we've got the players to do that. But we also try and manipulate sides to allow us to do that. And part of our kicking strategy is if we kick and put pressure on teams, they will normally kick poorly to us, and that will give us an opportunity to score tries. So I think it's not as simple as saying you don't attack or defend well. We're just not playing particularly well at the moment, and it has a knock-on effect both ways.
Okay, Thomas, gentleman at the back in the centre there.
This is to Ryan and Nigel. It's more than a year since we last had this sort of meeting. If we had had a meeting at the end of last season, virtually everybody in this room could have told you had problems in the front five. You've now dealt with the front row. There's still a bit of grunt left, short in the second row. I do see in this week's paper that Jim Hamilton's not happy in France. Whether you thought about bringing him back, but if not, we definitely need somebody like that because the grunt's still missing. The back five seem to be fairly well sorted. We've got some probably the best wingers in the country. But suddenly I've realised the halfbacks, from what I've heard tonight, Freddie Burns is going, Tim Taylor's permanently injured, Bentley's hardly played a game, so I assume they're not on the payroll next year. Tavis Knowles going, Jimmy Carrins is at the end of a 2-year mark contract, which I've not heard is being renewed. So thinking of the Environment Agency and their planning, we've got one halfback for next year, which is Robson. What have I missed?
Well, you've got one halfback in that sense, which you know of. I mean, we obviously have planned to cover the squad, and we plan very well. And I think, you know, we've looked right across the board at strengthening every position, and I firmly believe we've done that. What we haven't been able to do is announce all the signings as of yet. And I think, you know, we need to do that when we feel it's appropriate. I can genuinely tell you that our squad will be stronger next year than it is this year. And, you know, as I said earlier, we had 10 senior players out of contract last year, and we were working to the salary cap as it was then. This year we've had 24 senior players out of contract, which is part of the issue that you raised. But for me, the biggest thing is that brings with it a huge opportunity to strengthen as well, and particularly in some of the areas you mentioned earlier. So there's a huge opportunity, an opportunity that certainly, you know, I don't think the club has had for a number of years to be able to do that and make, you know, significant change. Yeah. Yes. There will be, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question for Ryan, which has come in via email. Ryan, for you personally, how much of a challenge is it running businesses in two different hemispheres? Obviously, you've got a rugby club in the northern hemisphere, motor racing team down under.
That's obviously very easy. In all honesty, it is tough. I've got a lot of early mornings and very late nights. For example, tonight I finish here. I go, what's wrong with that? I go back home, and from 10 p.m. till probably about 1 a.m. I'll be on Skype with Australia, going through everything for they're getting ready for the weekend. We just launched our car yesterday, which is obviously a big thing as well. So it does take a lot of time. It's not two businesses. I'm involved in 9 businesses, and it's now it used to be just England and Australia, and now it's been expanded to China and India as well. So we're talking about nearly 600 staff now, turnovers of around $500 million. So it's a huge amount of time and effort. But when I'm in the UK, my waking hours are predominantly spent around either catching up with things going on with Australia, or during the middle part of the day, pestering Steve and Nigel and asking what's going on, or coming down to the club and doing that, and as well looking after all my Premiership rugby duties. And I think you'd be surprised how much work actually goes into being an exec on the board of Premiership Rugby. It's hugely time consuming. Steve does is an executive board member, but we have a shareholder meeting 4 times a year. But the work that goes into that from all different chairmen from all around the clubs is huge. You just have to look at what Bruce Craig and a few other people have been putting into this European situation, and I can assure you he's not spent a huge amount of time at Bath. He's spent most of his time working with Premiership Rugby. So it's difficult. The time is the issue, but at the same time, a lot of what I do in Australia ends up helping what I do over here, and vice versa. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Ryan. Do we have a question from the floor? Gentleman at the back was first, I think, Tom.
So, a simple question. The aspiration for the rest of the season? For Nigel.
we've still got aspirations to be top six. We have to, you know, we have to have that aspiration. We have to have a driver and a motivator. I think that obviously getting into the Amlin quarter-final has given us a bit of a lift as well. So, you know, why not have a crack at that? The way it looks and it pans out. Obviously we've got Wasps away, but they're a team that we can beat, and then, you know, that could set up a fantastic fixture here at Kingsholm. So, you know, there's everything to play for there and everything to play for in the league. You know, we've got a tough assignment on Sunday, but it's probably a good time to go and play them, actually. We're treating every game as a cup final. I'd like to think that you know, the players in the right frame of mind. I think overall we've definitely seen an improvement the last 6 or 7 weeks, although it's not been where we wanted to be in general in terms of consistency, and we're still seeing you know, some high performances and some low performances, and that's for us to deal with really over the next term. But when you talk about those are sort of key focus points for us. Top six, get a semi-final and a final in Amlin, which are still attainable targets for us. They really are, and you know, I believe that. But within that, there are lots of targets that we are giving individuals and players as well, because we know if we hit those targets, then we'll hit those bigger targets. And that's the key for me, is that where we find ourselves, we're having to go right back to process all the time with the players to make sure that they are delivering the process on the field. But as I said earlier, you know, when things are going well and you've got momentum, you don't normally have to deal with some of those issues because they're taking care of themselves. So we're looking at some of the key processes that will allow us to actually perform and get those results. But absolutely, you know, I think a very good run in the Amlin is a potential. That's assuming that we can play the game. With Europe as it is, I mean. And also a top six. You know, why not? Why not?
Okay, do we have another gentleman at the front?
There's clearly been a large number of disappointments, and there's individual players who've not played as well as we would have hoped, have been disappointing. But there have also been some plus points. There's been some players who have grown this season. Which of those players have you been particularly pleased with?
I think you're absolutely right. I think there have been a lot of plus points, which have been probably overshadowed by the general team's performance. But if you go back a couple of weekends ago when the Saxons were playing, that weekend we had 15 players on English duty, whether under 20 Saxons or with England international side. Now we've got to be proud of that as a club, to be producing, you know, 15 players to play international rugby for England. You know, we all have to be proud of that, I think. And just touching on that, I think a lot of the young players have done particularly well this year. The likes of Elliot Stook, I think, has been phenomenal. He's come through very quicker than we all expected, and rightly so. You know, he's got the shirt at number 4. The great thing about Elliot is that he's only going to get better as a 20-year-old guy playing in the front 5 in the Premiership, which is the toughest, you know, league in terms of forward pack. And that guy is a special player, and he's going to get better. I think Gareth Evans has been a revelation this year. You know, I think we got real competition in the back row right now, and you know, if Ben was available, we had to pick a number 8, it would be a difficult call, you know, and Ben knows that, and he's pushing Ben, and that's what we need in virtually all the positions that we've got. I think Ryan Mills, unfortunately, who is leaving us. You know, I got a lot of time for Ryan. I think he's an exceptional player, and having had a run of a couple of games now is showing his potential. But I think for me, what's really energised me and what we should be proud about is the success of our academy, the fact that we've linked into Hartbury more than we've ever done, the fact that we've got a relationship with Cinderford now, which allows our younger players to play there. And the whole culture around what we're trying to develop within the rugby environment is really important going forward. And those young players in particular are really standing up this year and showing great character. And that's probably the most pleasing thing for me.
On the subject of the younger players now, there's been a question about the under-18s who've done very, very well in their academy league thus far. And we've seen a number of the players feature in first-team squads, the likes of Ollie Thorley and Lloyd Evans, etc. How promising is that group of players in your opinion?
they're an exceptional side. You know, every now and again you get an age grade team with exceptional talent in it, and that certainly is one. I don't know if many of you watch them, but they're actually that age grade are a particular joy to watch. You know, they play some great rugby, have some great individuals who will definitely become professional rugby players. And you would have seen a couple of those boys play last weekend as well. It's great to see them guys come on. And Sam, the young flanker who came on, made a big impact in the game a couple of weeks ago against Wasps. Is a great talent as well. So there's a lot of talented players there. Thorley being another one, who will play professional rugby, and gives us great hope going forward that, first of all, there's a big desire within Gloucestershire for young men to play rugby, to aspire to play for Gloucester, and want to be professional rugby players for Gloucester. And that will always stand Gloucester in good stead. Long after we've gone, the fact that you've got that depth of talent is vitally important, but also you've got an infrastructure now that will allow that, and a pathway that will allow that talent to come through. As part of our succession planning, we actually we plan our first team and what that looks like, although that will change, based on form and injury and various other things. When we look at obviously our recruitment and retention, we plan to see what our first team looks like, what the team behind that looks like, what the support players behind that look like, and then what the players in the system are behind that. So, your Ollie Thorley will be in our succession plan somewhere along that line, whether he's ready for a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, or 4 years' time. And as part of that succession, we'll see as well where the gaps are. So we can actually then look either to recruit a young boy into the academy, if there's a gap, say, on a wing, in 3 years' time within the flow of players coming through, we look to make sure that we find someone either locally, or we use Hartbury as the tool to be able to attract a quality winger, so that in 3 or 4 years' time we'll be competing for a first team place. Or, if we haven't got that, that's when we need to recruit outside, but we obviously need to recruit from outside to bring character and experience in as well, which is what we're going to do heavily this season. So it's a very comprehensive program and process that we have, which is engaged with the academy, which works in the same open plan office as us. So we know exactly what's going on. They are taking on the same philosophies and principles as the first team. With Hartbury, who we meet on a regular basis, so we know what's coming through their system. And only last week, or the week before, I think it was, we launched a joint scholarship with Gloucester Rugby and Hartbury, where 20 players, candidates, from the age of about 22 to 18, who had been processed through their CVs and knowledge that we had of them, came along to an induction day. We met them, they were put through their paces, and as a result of that, several of those guys will get scholarships with Hartbury, and 1 or 2 of them might get a joint scholarship with Gloucester and Hartbury. So that was a great initiative that was launched a couple of weeks ago, and we're looking to do an international scholarship as well. So there's a lot, coming back to your point about the good things that are going on. Maybe a lot of the good stuff right now is not that visible, because the visible thing is what goes on the field. We need to obviously change that, and hopefully I've explained some of the rationale behind what we're doing there. But I do believe there's a lot going on in the background in terms of the culture that we're generating, which will ultimately be what makes a success. If our culture isn't right, then we won't be successful, and we've got to make sure that that's correct.
Do we have another question from the floor? Tom, take your pick.
For Nigel or Ryan, looking ahead to the end of next season, where do you expect Gloucester to be?
Right, that's that one.
The club where it is at the moment, where it is financially, where it is with our support, where it is with our history and our traditions, anything less than top 4 is considered a failure, and top 6 is an absolute minimum. That should be what we should be doing in a bad year. There's absolutely no reason why we can't be in a top 4 position end of next season. the recruitment has been the largest recruitment drive that we've done since I've been around, and probably the largest one that we've ever done in one season. The amount of work that's gone into it, the amount of process that's been put in place has been significant, and Nigel and Alex and his team have got to take a lot of well, they've done a very, very good job there. So I would say that from a board and as a shareholder, we would expect top 4, and to be brutally honest, I would be disappointed if Nigel said anything different. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, the ultimate aim that we have as a club is to win the Premiership, and from there then you can start building up a squad if you're smart and you have a bit of good luck, and you know, even doing things properly like we do with the salary cap. You know, there's no reason why we can't compete at least at a higher level in Europe than we currently are. But I think our first step that we need to focus on is winning the Premiership. We've come so close several times, and I'm sure you all are just as frustrated as me. That was back when I was just a fan and didn't have all the current pressures on. But you know, it is there. It is what drives us, and it's something which we feel is something we can genuinely achieve. You know, we've turned the club around financially. We've turned so much around what we do with our academy and our training, everything like that. We've done huge amounts of good over the last 3 or 4 years. But that one thing that we still haven't managed to get right or get to exactly the position we'd like is our on-field performances. We've had glimpses of it, and we've had a lot of positivity, but getting consistency in and getting to a position where we feel we've got a squad, and that's, you know, everyone from, you know, your front row all the way back to your academy, that, you know, we can start building on to try and achieve you know, a Premiership win. That's what we need to be focusing on. So I hope that answers your question. It gives you what we like, what we expect, and what we see as absolute minimum.
Front here.
Do you think enough information comes out of the club? I'm referring to something, a few things that Nigel has mentioned. I have come to the forum tonight and have been greatly heartened by what I've heard. And talking of the forum, could there not be, say, 2 forums on the calendar so that we could all make arrangements? I mean, 1 week's notice for a forum I don't think was really adequate.
I'll take responsibility for that. Unfortunately, I've been summoned to go to Japan to meet with Toyota on Tuesday next week. The original form was meant to be next week, Wednesday. We were hoping to give 2 weeks' notice, but unfortunately that's had to be fast-tracked to today, so I'll take full responsibility and apologise for anyone who didn't make it, and hopefully anyone who didn't make it is watching it on the live stream.
But just to your point about information, it's a very interesting one. I'll be brutally honest with you. When I first came into the club, and a number of people who worked for me have heard this, I was a little bit disconcerted at times, actually, how much information and what type of information actually comes from the club. The perils of social media, the perils of, you know, most people in Gloucester suggesting that they've either played for us or played for United or played for someone through the years, and everybody seems to know somebody associated with the club. So first and foremost, I'll make no apologies for tightening up in a number of areas for information coming out, because this is not an ego thing. This is not just, this is the way that I like to do things. There are genuine situations this year where information could have leaked out, which could have physically cost this club money. It could have lost us a player. It could have made us look daft in front of other Premiership clubs, etc. So there has been a genuine, non-accidental move towards making us more professional in terms of what information that we do share. I will accept and take on board your point about some of the things that you've maybe heard tonight that you haven't heard, which may kind of placate or make people feel a bit better. I often get asked, you know, how's the business doing outside of, you know, the playing department. And again, you know, I've played sport at a high level. I've been a supporter of a team for many, many years. And it becomes a time when you have to have a little bit of emotional intelligence about what you do and don't share with people. You know, for example, off the field this year, we're actually having a fantastic year. You know, our profit this year will be better than it's ever been. Our cost structures have been better than they've ever been. We've got more revenue streams in than ever before. Our loyal sponsors have been fantastic. We brought a brand new main sponsor in. Some of the things that maybe some supporters don't like, the things like the Gloucester Rugby Lotto, the Gloucester betting app, and I'm not immune to the fact that that won't be everybody's cup of tea. The reason that we do these things is because, you know, we're not a boom or bust business. We're built on solid foundations. We've been here for 140 years, and I have a bit of a virtuous circle that I like to work towards, and that's to be a successful team. If you're a successful team on the field, you'll have happy supporters, you'll have happy sponsors, you'll have continuous investment in the club, you'll have a successful club, and it goes round and round and round. Now, you're not always going to guarantee success on the field as much as we'd love it. So I have to build a model here that works to a large extent irrespective of that. And we've done a lot of things this year to make sure that that happens, and as I say, this year's gone ever so well. I get asked sometimes, well, why don't you tell people that more? Why don't you tell them more often about how things are going? I have to take a step back at times, and, you know, 99% of people really want to, what's the main thing that drives us all, really? You know, and if I'm here for 1 more year or 10 more years, will I really get excited about saying, I came in and I tripled the profit and we did all these great things? Yeah, a little bit. But what I really want is silverware, and I want to be top 4 every single year. I want us to be a force. I want us to be all those things. So we have to take a step back sometimes and say, do you know what? Now isn't probably the right time to be saying some of the things which you may want to hear, but you know what, there might be 99 other people that say, well, do you know what, I don't care the chief exec telling me it's going great off the field this year, because quite frankly, we're 9th, I'm unhappy about this and this, and we are just trying to keep our powder dry on a number of things, and it is a really difficult balance to get. I really understand that, because I'm a supporter of a team, and I have been a supporter of a team all my life, and I get very frustrated if I hear a message from a guy in a suit saying, don't worry guys, all this bit's great, because I really want to know what's going on the pitch. So I do take it on board, and maybe I err too much on the side of caution with respect to trying to drip out too much good news, but I guarantee you now, if we were sitting at the top of the league, you'd be sick of hearing from me. So yeah, I'll take it on board, but there's a method behind the madness, and you know, we've still got to get the communication right.
Just to come back to your last point, I think you made about having more regular ones. I actually welcome these type of things because it gives me an opportunity to speak directly to the people that matter, really. I think a lot can get lost in transition, from the transition from here through the media and everything else. And when there isn't information, then things normally get made up. So it's a great opportunity for me, and as much as it, you know, it's not a great time for me to have this right now. But I'll be honest, I'll be upfront as I can, and you know, I'll do my best for this club, and I am doing my best for this club. And if I feel I couldn't do any more and there's nowhere to go, then I'll say that as well. But you know, I really don't think that's the case. I think there's a clear plan, it's a clear strategy. We've had the experience of the last 18 months now, and we know where we can go, and we know exactly what we're doing. So you know, just to be able to engage with people like yourselves, I think is important from my perspective, and make sure our messages are clear and strong to you all as well.
Just on that point, I think we will commit to a pre-season, i.e. start of season fans forum, and then a mid-season one just before Christmas from now on. And I think November was the initial plan to have one. Diaries didn't permit, so apologies for that. But we can minute this, it'll be on Twitter, wherever it is, but we're definitely going to have 2 a season. You can claim that as your idea. Yeah. Okay, well, Mike Brown from The Citizen is about a foot behind you if you want to have a chat with him. Yeah. Hey, Mike.
Point your finger. Stephen, you talking about finances then leads us on to a question that's coming online. Premiership Rugby recently announced an increase to the salary cap for next season. And the question is, it may have come in from Nigel actually, is Nigel going to be given all that money, the increase, to invest in the squad?
Yes. one word answer, yes.
I hope so, it's too late then.
Do
you want a whip round?
Okay, Tom, we've got a question from the back.
So it's a question for Stephen, and probably one for
Paddy as well. Stephen, the Rugby World Cup, can you give us some idea of the potential programme as it affects Gloucester during that season? Either will there be any home games at all before the World Cup? Does the Premiership season start before, during or after the World Cup? Another question really relating to that is, are there any benefits for the season ticket holders in relation to purchasing of tickets? If the season does start later than normally does because of the World Cup, how does that affect Paddy and his season preparations or players' preparations for the season?
Yeah, that was a long question. First and foremost, they're still working through the format at the moment. I'll be genuinely honest with you, the favourite at the moment looks like the season could potentially start later, which would mean, obviously, well, there are two scenarios that I think will happen. It'll either be that it will start afterwards because, you know, why start, stop type of thing, or those clubs, i.e. ourselves and Exeter, would do an exchange where we would play just away games at the start of that year, and then we would end up the season playing more home games at the end to compensate. If I was a betting man, I'd say I think it will start later than that. I think it was 1A. 1B was, will there be any benefits for Gloucester season ticket holders? Yeah, we're working on something at the moment with ER 2015, and what they are telling us, which is great because this is part of our negotiation, is we're very passionate about rewarding our loyal supporters. And not just season ticket holders, which are the lifeblood of the club, but there are a lot of people that for whatever reason can't be season ticket holders. They can make 5 or 6 games a year, but due to work commitments or, you know, the wife, you know, saying, well, that game's moved to a Sunday again, remember that's a family day. I have that as well, believe me, that you can't make all the games. So what we would call members of Gloucester, so people associated with the club, we're trying to strike a deal with ER 2015 where there is a communication prior to it going out nationwide, as it were, to give effectively first dibs to our own members. They've said that that's what's going to happen. The one kind of hygiene factor around that is, I came from the Olympics. I worked at London 2012 for 3 years previous to the Games. LOCOG was effectively what EL 2015 are now. They will work in the manner that they want to work, and they will work with us as much as we can. The reason I'm more positive and confident that they will do what I've just said is rugby is a very different animal to the Olympics. The world and their wife want to be at the Olympics. You know, you've got people flying in from Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, huge corporations from America, whereas rugby is very different. And I actually believe they need core support and core rugby support from around the country, and they're in very similar conversation with Exeter. So I'll be very surprised if our season ticket holders and members don't get first options on tickets at Kingsholm, and that's what I believe will happen. And I think the 1C was for Paddy.
Yeah, from my point of view, ultimately we want as many players playing international rugby as possible. So for us, fundamentally, we want as many players playing for England, Wales, whichever region's there. And then obviously the other foreign countries, Tonga, Fiji, whatever players we have at the time. So ultimately we want as many internationals playing because that's the ultimate experience for these players, and that's what they work hard for, to play at the pinnacle of their career. For me then, that means we have to develop the academy so that it comes through crucially at that period. So the next 2 years the academy has to develop to a point where we can bring them in for pre-season, knowing that we can trust those players to be as physical, as powerful, as dominant in the contact area, and be able to make an impact on the Rugby World Cup when everyone is going to be depleted of players. So for me, I'd envisage us bringing the players in early for a longer pre-season, provided that it's going to be a later start. If it's going to be a later start, we'll have a longer pre-season. We'd have breaks in the middle of those pre-season blocks to make sure the players are fresh, but it would be potentially a 3-month pre-season.
Paddy, on the subject of internationals, how closely do you work with the international setups? Because, for example, with the England boys, you might lose them for a month in the autumn and also for 5-6 weeks in the spring as well.
We have meetings in the lead up to the autumn internationals and in the lead up to the Six Nations, and then obviously if they go abroad at the end of the season. What we don't tend to do is have much communication during the tours themselves. The reason being that the England coaches tend to be very busy in that period. They tend to have, you know, potentially longer days because they're only working for 6, 8, 10 week blocks. So they might be working from 7 to 11 o'clock at night. So the communication we have is a lot less. We have a lot of communication beforehand and after, and they'll also send through all the stats that the players are doing, so their GPS loading, their wellness scores, their heart rate monitoring, and any data that we need, they'll still send through to us. But outside of that, it's very limited communication.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the floor? Oh, one there, and then we'll come to you next, okay?
On the point of internationals, when our players come back, particularly when they're sent back like Freddie and Matt this last week, how do you manage their disappointment and their reintegration into our team environment? Because obviously could cause disruption amongst other players.
Yeah, I think the players are well managed by England in the first instance, so I think they've got a real good feel for whether they're going to be involved early in the week or not, or early in the piece. And it's very individual depending on where a player is. Now, if you take Ben Morgan, for instance, he's had limited game time at England, come on and played very well for England, in fairness to him. But he now needs to come back and have a full game, really, and England want that. So we talk with the coaches as well, and they want him to have a start, really, this week. And providing he can play as well as he did when he's come on for England, then he'll have a start. And that's the trade-off. And I'm sure he will. He's in a good place at the moment, Ben, and based on what he's been doing the last couple of weeks, I'm sure we'll see a performance from him. And then when you've got someone like Freddie, who, realistically, he hasn't been in the run-in really for a first-team game with England. He's in the squad, obviously, and again, somebody who probably needs more rugby to try and get himself back into the swing of things. It's pretty easy to manage those guys. Matt Kvezic as well, he's in the squad, but he's not really getting much opportunity. They just want to come back and they just want to play. So it's managed very well because we speak to the English coaches speak to the players, and we speak to the players, and we're all really singing from the same hymn sheet, and the players are quite comfortable with that. And from my experience playing international rugby, when you're not actually playing international rugby, you want to play for your club team. You really do want to go back and play for your club team and prove a few points. So hopefully we'll use that to our advantage this weekend.
Okay, Tom, question from the front here.
This is for Paddy, really. When we watch the rugby sometimes, when the pack go into the line out, what we've realised is that they always walk really slowly to the line out. I want to know why they do that, really.
This is probably going to lead into another question which we're probably going to ask about, fatigue at the end of games and starting the games poorly and guys walking into the lineouts. I'll answer all the questions. I've got ultimate faith in these players. They're strong physically, they're very powerful, they're very focused, and I have to because they test so well. All their testing scores are excellent. So fundamentally, your first question there with walking to the lineout, they have specific calls that they have to make sure they get right. They have a policy they adhere to. They don't always walk slow to the line out. There are times when you see them actually quite sharp and in quite quickly. Sometimes they're a bit slower. Stan is the man to ask with that. I'm not going to try and pass the buck, but what I do know that issue there is not indicating a lack of fatigue. It's not indicating anything other than the players wanting to make sure they get that line out right. And what I will say about the line outs as well this season is that they're very high up in the league. The stats would show that our line-out success is very high up in the league. The players work extremely hard on them. Their unit sessions are very detailed. So with Stan, we'll run what we call a 2-minute drill, and the players have got 2 minutes to make as many quality deliveries and catches in the line-out as possible, without any crooked throws, without any poor detail or missed lifts. So it is very, very detailed what Stan does with the players. So there is a reason for them doing it. There's a reason for them coming to a huddle. There's a reason for them going that slow to the line out. I'm not going to answer Stan's question for him because that would be down to him. With regards to the physicality and issues with the end of the game, again I said I've got a lot of faith in these players. there's a composite, there's this fundamental thing with teams that are losing. Nothing will look good when teams are losing. And equally, when teams are winning, a lot of bad things are hidden. You've got a lot of teams there who win in sports and individual sports who actually have poor discipline, poor mentality, poor preparation. And you've got a lot of teams at the bottom end of leagues, and Man United, for instance, if you look at football, they've always been a team, you know in the last 20 minutes they're going to come strong. You know they're going to be the fittest at the end of the game. This season, for one reason or another, they haven't quite gelled. It's pretty much a similar team. You look at Bath last season, they were below us in the league, 2 or 3 places below us. They were struggling in games against London Welsh, etc. And it's the same fitness coach, and they're now third in the league, and he's doing a great job. He's got his philosophy, which is get the guys big and strong and powerful, and it's a different philosophy to mine. What I will also say is that I would far prefer to go to bed at night knowing that I've done as good a job with the players' fitness, and the guys aren't going to like this. I prefer to lose games knowing I've done a good job than to be winning games and be a fraud.
Okay, we're into the last couple of minutes now. Does anybody else have a question? Tom, we have one here and we have one at the back.
Hello. On the issue of retention, you said you rated Ryan Mills. How can we let him go to a club that's almost certainly going to be Championship? And also, do you regret how things finished with Q? He'd hardly got any game time at the beginning of the season. Apparently there was an issue with Fiji. In the end, he almost had to ask to go. I think that was very sad.
Every player is an individual, and we have to look at their individual circumstances. With Ryan Mills, I can only say so much because a lot of it is personal, and that we have to keep a level of integrity. But Ryan's biggest problem was the fact, really, that Billy Twelvetrees was here, and he felt that he was a similar player, and he wanted to go somewhere where he could guarantee 100% rugby. Now, he's apparently been given that guarantee. We wanted to hold on to him. We absolutely did, because of all the reasons I said. But also, when you look at the marketplace as well, whereas a side like Worcester, I'm sure if Ryan would have stayed, he would have competed with Billy Twelvetrees. And when he's been fit, he's had game time, and he couldn't deny that. He's had game time, and he's shown the type of player he is. But for the last 2 years, he's hardly been fit. And there is a question mark over that going forward, because he is susceptible to some injuries. But that's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned, because he's a good player, and I would have wanted him in my squad. But for me to hold him in my squad, there would have been a level, because of the competition he's up against, there would have been a level that we would have had to pay for him. Now, that is far below the level that Worcester are prepared to pay for him as well. So there is that behind it. But his main motivation is that he wants to play regular first team rugby, and with someone like Billy Twelvetrees here, he would find that difficult, he felt. So he made that call. It wasn't an easy call for him. I know it was a difficult call for him. But he's made that call, and I think one of the things I've learned as a coach is that you can't take these things personally. These things do happen. Players do move on. But the big thing for us is the vast majority of players have decided to stay, and that's positive, and it shows a lot of things actually. With Q, I mean, that again was something we didn't want to happen. It was driven very much by Q. He wanted to leave for his own reasons, which I can't go into, but we wanted him to stay. But when a player comes and says he wants to move on, doesn't want to play because he's got other things that he needs to do, we have to consider that, because ultimately we want players playing for Gloucester who want to play for Gloucester, and regardless of anything else that they bring. I think that's fundamental to it really, and it's about the culture. Gloucester Q didn't play much at the start of the season because he was injured for a large part of it, and he did have competition. He did get games when he was fit, and he got equitable games when he was fit to other players. So these are the things that we monitor and measure, because it's important, because players need to know that, and we as coaches need to have that information available when we speak to players. It's very important to players like Q and all players that they're playing, because it's their profession, and when they're not playing, it actually hurts their ability to develop and perform and earn money. So as coaches, we take selection very seriously, and there's a clear rationale every time we make a selection. And as I say, when Keir was fit to play, the statistics will show that he played as much as any other player who was fit to play at that time as well. He did go away to play for Fiji, and he went without blessing. He really did. Unfortunately, that extra game, which was the centenary game for Fiji, we could not allow him to play. It was not necessarily our rule. And to be honest, I would have gladly seen him play for Fiji, but it would have gone against our agreement as a PRL with the RFU, and completely disrupted what the English clubs have in terms of a financial agreement. So we weren't able to do that. Plus, he wasn't insured to play. So that was being a big risk for him to do that. So those were the practicalities of it, and that didn't help the situation.
Okay, Tom, we had a gentleman at the back.
Nigel, I just wanted to ask about recruitment of the coaching staff. Do you have any plans to make any changes or additions, and might it include that fine young chap, Andrew Hazel?
You'll have to forgive me on this one. It's a very delicate issue. We've still got a lot of the season to go, and I don't want to be making too many statements here, and that's part of the reason why we have to be careful with what we communicate. What I will say is that during the course of the constant reviews that we've had, particularly where we are this season, I've had to look at everything. I start with myself and I work down from there in terms of what we do, and it's been very comprehensive, and there will be change across the board really moving forward, and that's, I hope you accept that that's as much as I can really say right now. With Andrew Hazel, I mean, he's still hanging around. He's still, he's great. It's and he turns up when he can now, and he done a little bit of research for me recently on a couple of players that I'm looking at, and he's done very well on that actually. But I think he's got his own multi-millionaire business running, and I think that's going to take over his life. I think he'll always be associated with a club, I think, and he'll always want to be associated, and I'm sure he'll come in and support us whenever we want. But we haven't really spoken about that, but I think he's got his hands full with other things away from rugby, and I think that's great, and I think it's very important that rugby players do that. And I've always seen that the best rugby players are the most rounded rugby players, and someone like Andrew Hazel, who is a real character, has developed a profession and a career away from rugby, certainly helped him as a rugby player to become more balanced.
Of course, yep. We've got one final question now, which is coming online. It's for Nigel, just to round things off. Nigel, you're a season and a half into your role as Director of Rugby here at Gloucester. How much have you enjoyed your time here, and how excited are you about the future of the club?
It's been fantastic. I truly have enjoyed my time here. It's been a roller coaster in 18 months, that's for sure. There's no place like Gloucester. It's unique. I think the club is very, very special, and I'm working very hard to make sure that, like Ryan said earlier, we get the results that everybody deserves. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. I genuinely mean that. I think this is a very special place. It deserves to have a team that is regular top four. And I was part of the group that put the mission statement together, which is to consistently be top four, both domestically and in the European league or competition. And I think that is achievable for what this club has. I think I've learnt a lot in the last 18 months, both about the league that we're in and about Gloucester. And when I talk about, affecting the culture of the place, I think that is fundamental to getting that change and that consistent change, so that we can consistently be a top four team. And we haven't showed that consistency over the last 6 years, and there are reasons for that, and those reasons have been investigated and they're clear to me. And as a result of that, changes are being made. And I've enjoyed the experience, I've enjoyed the challenge. The people are very similar to what I'm used to, you know, very grounded, very down to earth, call a spade a spade. They're passionate about their rugby, and it's a unique place. I genuinely love it. I love the place and the environment, and we work very hard to make this a success.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that now brings proceedings to a close this evening. I'd like to thank my colleagues on the top table for coming here and fronting up and taking the questions this evening. And also to yourselves for coming out on such a foul night tonight and continuing to support the club and being there for us when we need you. Thanks everyone behind the scenes for making this possible, turning it into an online event as well as a person-to-person event, and of course Worthington for sponsoring us. And finally, thanks everyone for following online, and most importantly, safe trip home everyone tonight. Thank you.